Well, hi-ho, folks, and welcome back to another adventure of Turwinkle, the Gnome Mage. Well, hi, Turwinkle.
Greetings.
Are you all set for tonight, sir?
Sure.
Well, great, because tonight we're going to go talk to Narator, a wonderful role player over in Emerald Dream. We're going to find out all about his role play, a little about him, and get some great advice for you folks out there. And so without further ado, let us head on out to Dalaran and see if we can find this awesome role player. Alrighty, folks. Well, we've traveled here to Razor Hill, and we are going to be looking for Narator. And I heard he's hanging out in the garrison here. And so, let's see. We're coming around the corner, and I think, in fact, there he is, folks. It's Narator. Hello, sir.
Hello.
And right up here is Narator. He's the guild master of the Guardians of Time. He's the duelist Narator. He's a level 100 orc warrior. Well, it's certainly good of you to join us tonight, sir.
Pleasure being here.
All right. So, folks, what we're going to do here is we are going to find out all about Narator's storyline, a little bit about him, and get some great advice for you new role players out there. And so, with that, we'll be right back as we begin this awesome interview with Narator. Alrighty, folks, and we are back, and we have the awesome Narator sitting here with us. And so, first and foremost, Narator, how long have you been playing WoW?
I've been playing since vanilla, 2004.
Wow, okay. And how long have you been role-playing in WoW?
Basically since MOP.
Oh, okay, so just about an expansion ago. Excellent. Or two expansions ago.
Yep.
How long have you been role-playing an orc?
I've been an orc since vanilla, 2004.
And what about the orcs do you like?
They're big, they're powerful, and they're also a bit of a warrior race guy as well. There is a certain straightforward and honesty about an orc that I like.
Right, they don't mince words, do they, sir?
Correct. They're more men of action rather than words.
Right. Now, how did you come up with the name Narator?
Well, it originally started out as Narator, but I was on a PvE server and I was unable to transfer my character to a PvP server during the time of Burning Crusade. So I made another warrior named Narator. I tried to use the name Narator, but it was already taken, so I shortened it to Narator, and it worked. And then when I moved to Emerald Dream, the name Narator had a slightly orky vibe and the name stuck.
Oh, great. All right, excellent. So, folks, when we come back, we're going to find out about Narator's story. We're going to find out what his history is and what he's all about. So we'll be right back with that. All right, folks, and we are back. And so, Narator, tell us your story, his story of your character here. What's the story behind him?
Oh, boy. I got enough outline and backstory from RP posts to, shall we say, write several WoW novels.
Okay.
Not just for Narator, but all of the other characters as well in his story.
Oh, wow. So you could literally write a book, is that correct?
I could write several books if I had the time and motivation.
Right. So give us the bullet points then, basically.
Actually, Narator's story actually doesn't start with him. His RP story really begins with his father, Olgar Deathcheater, and his legend and legacy. And being more of a writer than an RPer, I tend to be a bit more creative with my lore for better or worse. And warning, there be dragons and spoilers here.
Okay. Alrighty, sir. We are ready.
The basic premise of Olgar's story, back in MOP, I had a theory that the Dark Portal could be used for time travel, and that the Infinite Dragonflight might be interested in altering the fate of Draenor to alter the fate of Azeroth. And the WoD expansion more or less confirmed/implied it, giving me the lore, the Blizzard lore, to comfortably get a detailed outline for Olgar's story.
Wow, okay.
My story begins in the First War and the opening of the Dark Portal, which attracts the attention of the Bronze Flight, who sent a young dragon named Eridormi to investigate, where she discovers the Orcish invasion. Recognizing the demonic nature of the Orcs' magic, Eridormi disguises herself as a warlock and sets out to study the Orcs. She initially assumed them to be all monsters until she meets a shaman who's about to be sacrificed. He runs on about the old ways, pricking her interest in continuing her studies of the Orcs. To further her study, Eridormi travels through the Dark Portals and ends up traveling 5,000 years back in time in the Tanaan jungle. I chose this time period so that anything I do would have no chance to affect Blizzard's canon, because one, they don't really care about that time period, and two, it's kind of a place where I could kind of carve out a novel and story without really bumping into any of Blizzard's canons or characters.
Oh, that makes very good sense, sir.
And at the time Eridormi ended up, the Bleeding chief dies and his son undergoes the eye cutting ritual, and basically sees himself betray himself to an infinite dragon. His vision also shows how his people become the first of an infinite horde, which in turn dooms all of Draenor and another unknown world, which is Azeroth. But in his vision, there is a glimmer of hope 2 warriors and a bronze dragon who appear in Darkest Hour to confront the Infinite Dragon. Although, because dragons do not exist on Draenor, the chief described them as winged serpents instead. The chief orders his hunters to find the bronze serpent. However, his 2 young sons, Olgar and Malor, decide, being brash young orcs, decide to venture off into the jungle to try to find the serpent, and get attacked by an ogre, who also becomes Eradomi's lunch. Well, after this incident, Olgar and Malor start to doubt the shrewdness of their decision to go off on their own to find her, and probably try to run, but they don't get far. Eradomi basically sees a chance to get closer to the orc and disguises herself as a young orc girl about their age and convinces them that she was outcast from her clan because of her gift. And after some convincing, Olgar and Malor basically agree to take her back to their camp. Olgar and Malor, after returning home, are scolded for being idiots, and the new chief recognizes Eradomi as a serpent of his visions, and as a powerful shaman agrees to basically teach her in the ways of shamanism in the hope that she would eventually help him avert the visions of his own betrayal. Eradomi, over the years, studies the Bleeding Hollow clan and the orcs as well, and Draenor as well, kind of creating like a chronicle of their history. But to make a novel-long plot short in a manner that fits a Turwinkle interview, Olgar and Malor have a big epic adventure which ultimately culminates in the defeat of the Infinite Dragon, as well as their father/chief in being killed. However, Eradomi is also shrewd enough to realize that even though the imminent threat was eliminated for now, the opening of the Dark Portal forever links the face of Draenor and Azeroth. So, Eradomi asks Olgar and Malor to carve out the bones from the Infinite Dragon, from which they would fashion 3 bone swords. Eradomi blesses all 3 swords with the blessing of the bronze flight, and using shamanistic magic binds 1 sword with the spirits of earth and water, creating Gordok, the Time Splitter, another sword with the spirits of fire, creating Ignos, the Approach Reaver, and with the spirits of wind, created its twin, Bengold, the Approach Cleaver. Olgar swears a bonding oath upon Time Splitter, Malor swears his on Approach Reaver and Approach Cleaver, and in doing so, they swear themselves to the Bronze Flight, becoming the first and only ageless on Draenor. And if you want their oaths, it is, let the ages come and their echoes pass, for I will watch as aeons come to ashes.
Now, so far it sounds great. Now, where does Narator come in?
I'm getting very close to that. With her mission complete, Eradomi travels back to her time to bring back her findings to the Bronze Flight. In the meantime, Olgar and Malor quietly watch over Draenor for the next 5,000 years, ensuring Draenor's fate would be unmolested by evildoers. And to make a multi-novel story short, Olgar, Death Cheater, ultimately finds his way to Azeroth during the time of the Third War, and ultimately makes the last stand to buy time during the Battle of Mount Hyjal during the Third War. However, before he's overrun, Eradomi, who is in the disguise of Braldorian Ghostwriter, finds him, and there is another novel-worthy story behind Eradomi and Braldorian Ghostwriter, which I cannot get into due to time constraints. His request is for her to retrieve Time Splitter after the battle and find his youngest son, Narator, and that when he is ready, give him the sword, which he promises to a dupe. And after Olgar dies/disappears, they never did find the body. I mean, he's the Death Cheater, for crying out loud. I can't just obviously kill him off.
Right. Now let me ask you, sir, is he still out there somewhere?
Very likely he's still out there somewhere.
Ah, okay.
But as Medivh said, this world is in need of heroes, not guardians.
Right.
So, anyway, finally to Narator's story. Basically, Narator was really too young to really understand his father's legacy. There were wild and outlandish rumors about Olgar claiming stuff like him being 200 years old and whatnot. Narator never really understood who his father really was, in part to maintain his Olgar's cover. Again, he's basically an agent of the Bronze Flight. He's not going to be running around screaming, "Look at me." Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's basically going to be the Obi-Wan for many other heroes.
So how does that shape Narator, do you think?
With Narator basically being orphaned at this point, basically becomes a thief and a delinquent, but eventually gets caught and gets conscripted into the Horde after being deemed salvageable. And he serves in the Horde's army as part of an expedition to Outland. But then when the Scourge invaded Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor, Narator decides to desert the military to join the Argent Crusade during the events of the Wrath of the Lich King as part of the Argent's Fifth Company. During his service to the Argent Crusade, Narator meets an honorable human paladin, Matthias Lighthammer, also his captain. And after an incident where Matthias stayed by his Horde unit, instead of just leaving them to die, Narator ultimately swears his life to Matthias, sinks the orc equivalent of Wookiee life debt. Narator would basically give his life, basically for Matthias at all costs. But during the March on Icecrown, the Argent Fist Company gets ambushed by the Scourge and basically completely wiped out. Narator and Matthias get captured by the Scourge, but another one of Narator's friends helps him escape from the heart of Icecrown Citadel, but he insists on rescuing Matthias from basically in the heart of Icecrown Citadel. But during the escape, his friend gets mortally wounded, and Matthias is already infected by the plague, and Narator is basically dragging the bodies of both Matthias and his friend. Narator is ultimately forced by his captain's orders to euthanize him on his way back to the Argent Coliseum. Explains what happens. He basically gets the Argent Crusade equivalent of a Medal of Honor of sorts. But the human alliance side warrior, Samia Mason, who also has a very important story in her own right, but again, due to time constraints, can't really get into her, is not too happy about Narator basically killing off her newlywed husband, and, well, basically swears bloody vengeance, aka she wants him dead, and doesn't help either that she's slightly racist towards orcs. And of course, Narator is also kind of devastated as well, because that Samia Mason basically being his captain's mate, let's just say his life debt also extends to her as well. So, after the fall of the Lich King, Narator is honorably discharged from the service of the Argent Crusade, and he basically becomes a mercenary during the Cataclysm, pretty much seeking his own death. And despite hurling himself in the face of many Alliance heroes and black dragons, he failed and only found great fortune. And this was during the events of Cataclysm. And then finally, we get to Mop, with Garrosh's rule becoming increasingly tyrannical, and the Korkron eventually finding out that he's a military deserter, begin a hunt Narator intent to bring him to justice. Narator is forced to flee to Pandaria. It's here where he could basically continue his mercenary work, and it's also here where Eridormi finally finds him, still under the goose of Braldorian Goldstrider, and as kind of a way to both test him, and she offers him a job to protect her archaeology expedition. He is initially distrustful of the Eridormi, knowing that, well, elves are not especially trustworthy, but eventually he agrees to after she offers to pay him enough. During the job, his party, which includes a arsonist Murloc, a Death Knight with the last name of Peacebloom, and a middle name of Madeline, like Madeline, a ogre mage who speaks Murloc, a drunken dwarf tracker, and a South Sea captain, all of whom were pretty much broken out of the stockades, well, the Stormwind stockades. He eventually uncovers a evil cult, which was likely connected to the Burning Legion, and Narator eventually finds a new purpose in life. After this job, Eridormi sends him on a quest to meet an old blade master, who, unknown to Narator, is his uncle Malor, and under his tutelage, he's basically learned some of the fighting styles of the Ageless. And he also gets 2K in Three's Arena and Duelist as well. And after getting his title, Malor and Eridormi decide it's time for him to get Time Splitter. And they give Time Splitter to Narator, which he swears his oath on, his father's sword. And although I haven't really had much time to write the topic on Narator on Draenor, in addition to him being one of the many commanders on Draenor, he also works to learn more of his father's legacy, as well as to stop the alternate universe version of his father, who willingly corrupted himself with the demon blood around the time the Iron Horde fell under Gul'dan's influence, to bring forth his vision of the end times, which is pretty much the destruction of Draenor, which he's still clinging onto. And that's about the shortest version of Narator's story I can come up with.
There is a lot of story there, and that's just the very, very short version, folks, of an awesome, it could be a several book series on this wonderful storyline of Narator. Not only do you get to learn about the history before him, but you get the storyline of where he picks up and he starts his adventures within the game. And I think what he has done here is amazing. And the amount of lore and history behind his character is quite extensive. And so kudos to you, sir. You did an excellent job there. So folks, when we come back, we're going to find out a little bit about the author of this awesome storyline and find a little bit about him in real life. So we'll be right back with that. Alrighty, folks, and we are back. And next we're going to be talking a little bit about what Narator does in real life. Because, again, we want to break that stereotype of what a role player looks like in real life. We're not all 40-year-old guys living in mom and dad's basement eating Cheetos all day, but we do a lot of things outside the game. And so, Narator, what are some of the favorite things you like to do outside of WoW?
Well, to a start, it's more like living in your mother's upstairs.
Okay.
But anyway, I do like powerlifting.
Oh, okay.
And another thing that I like to do outside of WoW is I just like reading up on just everything. I'm primarily addicted to learning, whether it be like WoW lore or politics, biology, human evolution.
Wow.
If you name it, I probably have done some research into it on my own time.
Wow. So quite a bit of reading you do there.
Mm-hmm. Not so much fiction reading, but more nonfiction reading, but
more stuff about knowledge and that sort of thing.
Yes, and like when I write, I do want there to be a bit of a real-life basis in what I write.
Oh, excellent. That's a very important aspect to any creative writing, is utilizing a lot of stuff that we experience in real life and the knowledge that we have about real life and incorporating that into the game to make our creations just that more lifelike. Isn't that right?
Exactly. But another part of the thing is I'm actually a high-functioning autistic. On one hand, I am very, very, very religious to the point of obsession about my warrior. But on the other hand, I have a hard time meeting new people.
Well, that's what's great about this game, isn't it? You're able to meet folks that you might not have the chance in real life to do. Isn't that correct?
Yep. And it does give me something in common that I can basically
talk about, right?
Not just talk about, and basically a common interest and goal. That's why I kind of like the game.
Right. Excellent. So again, I think that's one of the things that I love about this community as well, is that, a lot of folks sometimes have a hard time going out there and meeting folks socially. And through the game, we're able to do that with one another, no matter where we are really in the world. And it really opens up a lot of social avenues that we might not have the opportunity to explore in quote unquote real life. And so that is wonderful. So again, really like the writing, heavy into reading, and are able to utilize a lot of social stuff within the game. So excellent, sir. So folks, with that, when we come back, we are going to talk about Narator's roleplay style and get some advice for you new role players out there. So we'll be right back with that. Alrighty folks, and we are back. And so, Narator, what do you consider your roleplay style to be? Are you a heavy, medium, light role player? What kind of roleplay style do you have?
Like in game, I'm probably more of a medium role player.
Oh, okay. And do you do a lot of paragraphs when you emote? A lot of emotion in your writing?
No, in game, it's just there's not really a lot of time to do a very complicated emotes.
A lot of times you don't have a lot of time to do a lot of emotes and that sort of thing here in Art Emerald
Yep.
Dream. So you're more of a medium style role player with the shorter emotes and whatnot. Is that correct?
Correct. It's just I don't need to emote every little thing.
Right. Okay, that's fine. That's perfectly okay. And so we're talking about advice next for those new role players that are wanting to come and role play in WoW. So what's some advice that you would have for that new person?
Well, my advice, for a new role player, is read up on WoW lore. Maybe Warcraft books, or at the very least WoW wiki. In fact, I am actually very, very interested in going online and trying to find a audiobook of Rise of the Horde, get a better idea of Olgar's story, so I can write Olgar's story a little bit better. And if you really want to create the best WoW story, you need to start with the source material. And if you're really good, you should aim to not only be lore compliant, but add and build off that lore as well. So by the time you will leave, there's more lore than what you've started with.
Oh, that is some great advice, sir. You bet. Yeah, it's always wonderful to be able to build on a strong foundation of lore, because that's really going to, again, make your story more believable in the meta that you are role-playing in. Isn't that correct?
Correct. And, of course, you don't have to necessarily write a big epic story as well. I mean, it depends how invested you are into your character and how much you want to RP it.
Right. For a lot of folks, it's hard to come up with a huge story right off the beginning, isn't it?
It is. And, in fact, I wouldn't recommend, because when I first started off with Narator, he is a warrior. I kind of wanted him to start off as really an average guy. I mean, he was a war veteran, but not really. He didn't really have any special magic powers or really anything. But the important part was that I was able to grow his character through the story. And in fact, I really, really, really recommend studying, I think Mark Campbell's Hero's Journey or Monomyths, because the Monomyths is really the heart of every good heroic story imaginable, from Star Wars to The Matrix to Lord of the Rings, everything. That's really where I kind of wanted to start with Narator.
Okay, yeah. I think that's very important to note that, and we've talked about this on the Looking for Roleplay podcast as well, is that you don't necessarily want to start out as, the king of Stormwind or anything like that, because number one, people aren't really going to take you very seriously. So it's always best to start off as, the squire or something, and then work your way up. And I think that's a great bit of advice, sir. Wonderful.
And that's the important part, is that you have to start small and then grow. When you stop growing, you start dying. And that's also a major criticism I've had with Emerald Dream RP. It tends to stagnate because of lore. And nobody basically willing to try to expand off that lore in fear of any little thing they would do would trash Blizzard's lore. I mean, hell, I've written all of this, and I haven't really bumped into a Blizzard lore at all, because everything I do is parallel. And I keep canon characters out of my RP at all cost. And that's another word of advice. Keep canon characters out of your RP at all costs.
And so some great advice here, folks, from Narator, and some wonderful, wonderful thoughts about not only his own role play, but giving you guys some great foundation to work off of for your role play. So with that, we're going to come back and we're going to get some great shout outs from Narator to the folks that he loves within the game. So we'll be right back with that. Alrighty, folks, and we are back. And so, Narator, I know you have a couple shout outs to give. So who are we giving a shout out here to tonight?
I would like to give a shout out to Zendarian and the 73rd.
Oh, wonderful. Now, have you role played with that group for a bit?
I have role played with them for a little bit. In fact, my human, actually Samias, is actually in that guild as well.
All right, sir. Well, excellent. And so, folks, when we come back, Turwinkle is going to give, or Sluffy, Turwinkle's disguise, we're going to give Narator a wonderful goodbye. So we'll be right back with our final thoughts on Narator. Alrighty, folks, and we are back, and we have Narator here. And, sir, I guess you're getting ready to go?
Yep, my arena partners are waiting, and they're not happy.
Uh-oh. Well, we do not want to keep them waiting, sir, but we certainly want to thank you for taking the time tonight to speak with us about not only Narator, but to talk a little bit about yourself and give us some great advice for those new role players out there.
Mm-hmm. And if you want, like, Olgar's story, I will write it, the whole thing.
I'm sure a lot of folks would love the opportunity to read that. And so, folks, as soon as we find out when that is up, Turwinkle and I will make sure we get that advertised out for you folks to go and take a wonderful time to read all about not only Narator's backstory, but maybe a little bit about Narator as well.
Yep, and there are many other characters with almost as extensive as a backstory as Narator in my RP, or Samia, Eridormi, and so many others.
Alrighty, and so with that, folks, we'll see Turwinkle back at the shrine with his final thoughts on this awesome role player, Narator.
Foda, let's ride. There we go.
Alrighty, folks. Well, we're safe and sound back here at the Shrine of the Seven Stars. And so, Turwinkle, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Indubitably.
Well, let's give Narator a big thank you for taking the time to speak with us tonight, sir.
Thank you.
You bet. And so, folks, if you like this episode, click that like button. If you'd like to comment on this episode or on any of our previous episodes, please do so below. Let us know what you liked and what you didn't. And finally, if you would like to subscribe, well, we would love to have you. So hit that subscription button today. Well, excellent job as always, Turwinkle. And sir, we will see you next time.
It's been fun.
It has been fun. Bye-bye.